Welcome to the Actor's Voice Conversations with John and Russ. Today, with us, we have Kirsten Kunkle, who is just a wonderful soprano. I'm going to give you a little bit of her bio here. Hailed as an outstanding singing actress with a voice that has been described as beautiful, ethereal, powerful, fiery, and bewitching. She's a host of operatic roles, Agatha in Der Freischütz, the title role in Suor Angelica, Mimi in La Boheme, Rosalinda in Die Fledermaus, Mother in Amal and the Night Visitors. My goodness, it goes on, and it's wonderful. I'm going to skip ahead here. She made her professional musical theater debut in 2016 with the Scranton Shakespeare Festival as Domina in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. I would have killed to hear that. I just have to tell you.
It was a lot of fun. A lot of
I
fun.
want to hear all about it. She has recorded extensively through the Comic Opera Guild, especially the works of Victor Herbert, and recently made her European debut as a Naxos recording artist. We have a lot of things to talk about. Welcome, Kirsten.
Thank you. It's
You're
so nice
welcome.
to be here.
Yes. I mean, to start us off, we'll ask the typical first question. Can you kind of tell us about your journey, how you got into doing what you do?
Sure. So I'm from Fremont, Ohio, and my mother was a pianist for fun, but originally a ballerina by training. I ended up having two psychologists as parents. So I had a very eclectic, very cultural, very exciting childhood, which I thought was completely normal. And then as I've gotten older, I've realized that I had a lot of exposure to things that a lot of people didn't, which was really great. So my mother played piano for as long as I can remember. I remember hearing my father tell stories about how they had a grand piano in the house before they had a bed. So it was really important to always have music. So I sang my whole childhood at the piano. We sang musical theater mostly because that's what I grew up on. And then I started taking lessons when I was 12. And right away, my teacher honed in on the fact that I had a voice that could probably sing classical music and maybe even opera someday. And I fell in love. I went to see Faust at the Toledo Opera, and that was my first opera that I ever saw. And later, last year actually, I got to do a concert version of Faust and play Marguerite, and it was kind of like a nice full circle moment. But I fell completely in love with opera. I've always been one that just loved challenges, and opera seemed like the most challenging thing. And so I went for it. And I loved musical theater too. I still love musical theater. You don't know me well enough, I don't think yet, but every year I do a Name the Musical on my Facebook in May for a month, and then somebody gets bragging rights, whoever wins. So I love musical theater with a passion, but my voice tended to go toward opera, and I loved the music. So I studied all the way through high school with one teacher, and she actually studied with the teacher I studied with in undergrad, and I went to Bowling Green. um, I was a voice performance major, and I studied with Virginia Starr when I was there. She's passed on now, but she was wonderful. We were so similar that we kind of butt heads and didn't always agree with each other. And I really appreciate what she told me now, and I wish I'd appreciated it more when I was, 18. After that, I spent my senior year abroad, and I went to Austria. That was while I was still considered a Bowling Green student, and took voice privately, studied German. I was also an Italian minor. Then I went to University of Michigan straight through for master's and doctorate both. And I always kind of wanted just to achieve a terminal degree from when I was a child and on. So I went and just did a terminal degree, and I was lucky that I was accepted into the program and everything. But I finished at 26. So I finished my degree at 26 and then thought, okay, what do I do now? And so I started applying for teaching jobs. I ended up working my first year out as an adjunct at three different institutions in Ohio: Youngstown State, Terrace State Community College, and Wright State University. At Wright State, I taught musical theater. At the other two, I taught a mixture of classes. And I also had a church job at that time. So it was a very busy year. And after that, I went to Shorter College down in Rome, Georgia for 2 years. And I was there as a visiting assistant professor. After that, I went to Lincoln University, which is how I ended up in the Mid-Atlantic area. So I was there for 4 years. I was their opera director and primary voice teacher. And after that, I took a big leap of faith. I got management, started singing a little bit more, and I left teaching for a while and only taught privately, and sang wherever I could and anywhere that they would hire yet another soprano. Um, and I did a lot of odd jobs, and I did editing work, and I did part-time retail, and I did all sorts of things. And eventually, long story short, and it's too late for that, um, I, I ended up starting my own grassroots opera company with a friend, and that's kind of where I'm at now. I have a full-time day job. I have a 6-month-old daughter and a husband who is very nicely watching her at the moment. And I have an opera company that even during the pandemic, I'm still finding a way to run. So I'm very busy. I don't have any downtime ever, and I'm okay with that. It's been an interesting ride. It's been a little different than a lot of people because I went full force through academia right away and then changed gears right around 35. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. So it's been really fun so far. It's been really hard so far. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But that is my, in a few minutes, summary of where this all started and came from. Thanks, Mom.
It's great.
So what was it about opera that really drew you or draws you that feeds this need to give so much of yourself into it?
Sure. I think initially it was just that it was beautiful and grandiose. I think I love the spectacle of it all. I love the costumes and the scenery and the hair and all of that, the makeup, and just the incredible beauty of the sound. I mean, even at an early age, I was 12 when I started singing opera, and I was 13 when I did my first opera. And you both know Kevin Bilsma because you went to Bowling Green. He was the chorus master of the very first opera I was ever in, which was Tosca at Opera Lenawee, which is defunct now, but it was in Michigan, and my poor mother drove me to rehearsals, and it was my very first opera when I was 13. So after that, I was kind of hooked. I mean, it was really neat being at that, transitional early teen age and getting to see these fantastic singers singing Tosca and Cavaradossi and things like that. And ever since then, it really was the challenge. It was, how do I get better? How do I go to the next level? What is the next level? How do I find my personal best, which is something I had to figure out that was the most important thing, and not, winning a competition or getting a job. It was really about being my best. And, we do it every day. So, every day is different. We find our own best that we can be that day. And so I've gotten to the point now where I'm pretty happy that I'm fairly consistent. And if I can go beyond that, then I'm even happier. So consistency was key for a long time. I was just trying to get to that point. I'm a spinto, so it took a while to grow into my voice. So that's another aspect that was a little frustrating when, you finish your terminal degree at 26 and your voice still isn't remotely settled.
It's so interesting. We've talked to a few people who have had that kind of experience, especially for classical singers with big voices, who wanted to go into opera, but they were still, oh, you're a baby. You finish how many degrees and you're still the baby.
Yeah, I was the baby for a very, very long time, and then it was like, oh, you're getting a little old. So there was no transition period at all.
You get the 1 year.
Like, oh, you should be a young artist, but wait, no, you're a more dramatic voice. So yeah. I was the epitome of I'm going to have to carve my own path, I think, and I'm still doing it. I'm still changing what I'm doing every day and trying to find a new way to navigate a career in this crazy, crazy world that we live in, and that has just gotten crazier this entire 2020.
Absolutely.
I think that's an awesome message too. The idea that you're carving out your path. The things that drew you to opera as a singer, did they draw you as a teacher as well? Because I know you do a little bit of everything. So
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think because I went through a DMA, and I think, when you go and do a DMA, people are like, "Oh, well, you're going to be a teacher." Okay, yeah, it makes sense. And I discovered pretty early on that I really liked teaching, and I was also really good at it. I think because maybe my roots were there with my parents being psychologists and teaching me to be very observant, that I can read people fairly quickly and fairly well. And so personality wise, I try to navigate that very quickly and find what clicks with that person. And so with that, you build the trust that you can kind of work a little more critically to help people get better quicker and more to the point where they really trust you and really feel like they can grow themselves. Because if you can't trust your teacher, you're not going to sing well. And that's just the truth of the matter. But yeah, I think because I love the beauty of the sound, bel canto style and techniques were very accessible to my ear, that I wanted to hear that in my students. I wanted to hear a beautiful sound, an easy production, just the best healthy singing that I could find. And when I was teaching at Shorter, I was able to observe the Nats intern program. And that's actually where I met my current teacher, the person I've been with for 10 years, who is Carmen Balthrop. And she was very unconventional from what I had seen in the past, because it was all about sensation for her. And watching her work with one of my students and work with the interns, I just thought it was fascinating how free they all seemed. And I said to myself at the time, if I ever am close enough to DC, I'm going to try to study with that woman. So I moved to Northeast Maryland and gave her a call, and she said, okay. She said, I think I can help you. And she really did. She really has helped me. And unfortunately, I haven't seen her since before my baby was born, because, baby, then pandemic. But yeah, I grew a lot, not only watching her, but then of course studying with her. And then my teaching evolved as well into making sure that my teaching was purely based on making sure that they were singing healthily and completely effortlessly in as much as they possibly could, because really I've noticed when people have technique issues, it's usually because they're getting in their own way. So at least that's been the case with me and most of my students. Yeah.
Oh, so true. I want to come back to that one in just a second, but you
Sure.
laid something down in getting to that point. So after being in academia full-time for X amount of years, you left, moved states. Was that for your teacher, or that just happened to coincide that that's where you landed and you were close enough to make that work?
That just happened to be where I landed. Yeah, I was actually teaching when I studied with her. I was teaching at Lincoln at the time, Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. And I was there for 4 years. And she was my teacher the whole 4 years I was there. And I've just stayed with her when I started teaching privately and singing more. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it worked out really well.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Absolutely.
So are you still teaching privately now in Wilmington? Are you still have an active studio, or have you mostly transitioned for the opera company?
Mostly to the opera company. I still take a private student here and there. I haven't had a ton of success building a studio where I am, and I think it's kind of a bit that University of Delaware is right here. Cab Calloway High School is right here, the Performing Arts High School. And so I'll get an occasional student here and there, but I don't have the time to dedicate to building a private studio while trying to do the other things. But I love to teach and I miss it. I miss having, 5 to 10 students privately all the time. It was nice to be able to kind of help them grow over a period of time and see where they ended up in 2, 3, 5 years, whatever it might be.
Have you found any overlap between what you loved about teaching and the skills that you used in teaching and what you're doing with the opera company?
Oh, yes, 100%. So when I got to my job at Lincoln, I was put into the opera director position, and I'd only done an opera role prep and opera scenes before that. And I knew I loved directing. Directing was so much fun for me. I loved being able to come up with a vision and see it happen. And so I got put into the opera director role, which was fantastic. But I didn't know at the time that I was coming into a school that didn't have a theater program, didn't have a dance program, didn't even really have any place to store props or scenery and no costume closet. So I was kind of going right into, the fire of learning all of this stuff on my own. I did hire a tech director with the grant money that we had for the first few shows. And at some point he wasn't available, and I said I had to do lights on my own. I'd never done lights before. So I learned really, really quickly that I had to learn quickly. I had to just try and jump in. And if I was wrong, I was wrong, and it was okay, and so, yes, I think a lot of that has really just kind of bled over into being an artistic director, that I have to have a vision for everything that I do. And that goes from everything to how we cast, down to photo shoots for publicity material, to how we stand people on stage, to, the venues that we use and where we set the piano, but also how we present ourselves social media wise, how we present ourselves if we are speaking and singing at a paid event that someone has hired us to do. So it kind of really taught me very quickly that if you're a director in any form, an artistic director, a stage director, just the head of whatever you're presenting, you have to kind of be a figurehead. And that also means that you're representing the entirety all the time. So, it's something that I've always kind of said to my students, and also to the youth that I know, don't put anything online that you don't want everyone to be able to see. Doesn't matter what your privacy settings are. That's what screenshots are for. That's what, you don't get the privacy that you think you do anymore. So you need to make sure you're presenting your best self all the time. And that doesn't mean you can't make mistakes. It just means that you have to learn from them quickly and get better. And I think that carried over for me a lot. When you have a big trial by fire kind of situation where you're learning on the fly, you can get very frustrated very quickly. And you can't show that either, especially when there's students involved, because they're looking at you as the expert, even if you don't know what you're doing, and you're learning as you go. So my very first opera that I directed at Lincoln was Treemonisha, which just happened to coincide with the fact that I was studying with Carmen Belthrop, who played Treemonisha. But I was at an HBCU. It was easier to put together than Porgy and Bess, which it was what every single student said, can we please do Porgy and Bess? And I said, no, you're an undergrad only school. That's not going to happen. And if someone else pulls that off with an undergrad only school, great, good for you. That's awesome. It wasn't going to happen with the program we had in place at the time, but Treemonisha happened, and it was a lot of work, and it was the ability to see the vision that I had come to life that wasn't necessarily in the score, was just so thrilling for me. And it was so exciting. And so I kind of ran with that when we started the opera company too, because even though it's a concert opera company, there's still a lot of logistics that no one ever sees. And so if you can kind of maneuver and navigate within those logistics and make it work, then you have a product that you can show. And that's the case with a student too. You're helping them get to their best self. Yeah.
I think that's great. And your concert operas are semi-staged often, yes? Didn't you just do Don Giovanni?
We did just do Giovanni. I didn't stage it. Sometimes they will do their own thing within the parameters of we have stands in front of us. Which I think they absolutely ran with Giovanni. I don't know how much of it you've gotten to check out, but it's all on YouTube if anyone wants to see it. Don Giovanni from Wilmington Concert Opera. But when we do our galas. So every year we've done a fully realized concert opera, and then we do galas, which are showcases basically. Those, if there's any interaction, if they're duets or anything like that that are off book, then we usually try to stage those a little bit, and that's usually with my guidance. I won't say that I necessarily direct them, but if people need ideas for what they want to do, or if it's something I'm specifically singing, I'll direct it a little bit.
Yeah. That's cool. So, I'm going to pull up my next question here. I'm going to cheat and look at my sheet.
That's what it's there for.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So, I think that you covered a lot of these wonderful things. In terms of your own singing, was there, we talked about how big voices always take a little bit longer. Was there like an aha moment? Was there a time when you were either singing something, whether it be a role or, something for school or otherwise, where things just kind of lined up and clicked and you were like, this is how it works?
I feel like there have been numerous aha moments. Mostly because my voice just keeps deciding to change on me and grow as I've gotten older. I'm 39. I'll be 40 in September, and it's fairly settled. I think I'm going to stay where I'm at, voice Fach-wise, but who knows? People say that, and they say, "Oh, well, I got to be 40, 42, and all of a sudden I was a full dramatic." I don't really want that to happen, but I don't have control over that. I love the rep and the Spinto rep, and I would love to stay there. But yeah, I think I had finished my doctorate. I was about 27. I was doing a concert, and I was singing a nice hodgepodge of pieces. I don't even remember what was all on it, but I remember I sang Quando Menvo on it. And I had always had problems because I'd done a lot of Zwischenfach work, where I'd done a lot of mezzo stuff because I was cast as a mezzo. I had the bigger lower range. I had volume in the lower range. But I always knew I was a soprano. I always knew that was where the ease of sound was for me, but I couldn't figure out how to navigate it yet. So even though I had that doctorate in hand, and I had a great teacher for my doctorate, he was fantastic. I studied with Rico Serbo, who was at Lawrence University and then at University of Michigan. And he was phenomenal, but there's only so much a teacher can do when the voice is still developing. So I was always fighting not bringing up weight into my upper register and getting too heavy, or however you want to call it. I was always tensing up too much to sing the high notes. And so I remember being in this church and singing this concert and saying, "Oh, why not? Just go for it. Just throw it away. Just do it." And it was the best I'd ever sung those high notes. And I thought, why didn't I do this earlier? Like, what's wrong with me? Why didn't I just go for it earlier? And that kind of started to open some doors for what I could do. And shortly after that, I was still navigating it, and I got better, and the rep got easier. But it wasn't really until I was about 30 that I got with my current teacher, and everything started to settle, and she really helped me get out of my own way. And that's one of the things that I think I've learned most from her, is that if you keep hitting a wall, you need to go around it. And you need to find a way to go around that wall, because, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and it's not working, there's a reason it's not working. So you need to figure out, what am I doing, or what can I change to make it work? And it may not even make sense to you, but you can try it, and then you can figure out the mechanics of what's going on. So yeah, so that was my first big aha moment. Earlier, when I was just starting my doctorate, so I would have been like 24, I think. I met with Rico for my first meeting. I sang a little bit for him, and he says, "So I think I want to give you the Wesendonck lieder." And I was like, "Wagner? You want me to sing Wagner?" I'm like, "I'm not a dramatic soprano." He says, "No, not yet." I said, "No, wait, no, you don't get it. I'm not Jesse Norman. I can't sing like Jesse Norman." He says, "Not yet."
Not yet.
And, I will never claim that I could sing anything like Jesse Norman, ever. But it kind of gave me a little bit of permission to say, okay, I don't have to minimize. I can be me. And that was kind of neat. That he said, you know, let's try it. If it doesn't work, it's okay. And he also had me working on Costa Diva as a vocalese. I mean, you know, things that I never, ever, ever thought I'd sing. And, you know, and I sang that for the first time last year. And it was still really hard, but I could do it. Yeah, I think that was another little aha moment. I've had a number of those where someone has kind of just said the right thing at the right time to kind of give me permission to let myself be my best self. Yeah.
That's great.
It isn't always the case where you just hear something from the right person or in the right way. You might have heard that concept 1,000 times, but it's just that 1,001st that makes it stick. You know, the voice teachers in us go, "What? Why? I've been telling you that forever." And then they hear it in a master class. It's like, "Oh, this is brand new information." Mm-hmm. Light bulb.
And I guess that's why we still go to master class. Yes, and then that person says, "Yes, I am a master teacher." Yeah. Regular teacher sits in the back of the room and just. No, I mean, you know, obviously we all know the value of doing things like that, but yes, you're 100% true. It is just about, you know, sometimes hearing the right wording at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then for us as artists as well, you know, where are we drawing our inspiration and where are we learning from? Is it coming from the teacher? Is it coming from the accompanist? Is it coming from the coach? Is it coming from all over the place? And where do we draw that inspiration? Where do we align ourselves or open ourselves up to learn and to grow into something new?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you can't take inspiration from the various things you're doing, then you might be doing it wrong. You know, you just kind of need to keep your eyes open and be open to it. And I think that that's one of the hardest things is being vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what you're doing, whether you're a singer, whether you're a teacher, whether you're, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
100%.
And being willing to step out and do something that's unplanned, that's different than the original plan, that's, you know, something you never thought you'd be doing. Actually, it brings up a cool point. One of the things I didn't highlight in your bio, but I know that you do a lot of, is new works. Yeah. You've done all kinds of premieres and of operas that a lot of people probably have never heard of.
That's very true. Very, very true.
And not just because people don't know opera, but because these are literally new works.
Yeah.
Is that something that you sort of found your way into purposefully, or was it like the opportunity came up?
It was a complete accident. Complete accident, and wonderful. One of the best, most wonderful accidents of my life. So, where I really got the most out of doing new works was with the Philadelphia Opera Collective. And I think I did 4 or 5 brand new operas with them. And unfortunately, they're not in existence anymore. But they've given their nonprofit status to Diecast, which is a theater company. And the woman who was the main librettist and director, her name's Brenna Geffers, kind of took that over with one of her friends, one of her other theater maker friends. And so I'm sure that I'll do more with her at some point. I did a virtual piece with her before virtual pieces were all the rage, about a year ago. And, you know, and it's kind of nice because whenever she needs an opera singer, she does give me a call. And she incorporates opera and classical music into her work a lot. But getting back to the actual question, so Philadelphia Opera Collective kind of popped into my life. I had done a little bit of new music before. I had done this piece called Tu Opera when I was down in Georgia. And the reason I did that was because they specifically asked the faculty at Shorter College if they would do this piece. And, you know, a couple, we'd have an artist in residence come in and I'd sing an art song and things like that. And that was all really cool and really fun. But it wasn't until I got involved with Philadelphia Opera Collective that I started like really starting to create new works with people. I auditioned for their production of The Consul, and I was cast as the voice on the record and the foreign woman. And they incorporated it to make it one character who did all these foreign things in all these different languages. It was kind of neat. And after that, Brenna came up to me and she says, I really like working with you. Um, I'd like to work with you again. I said, great. I'm always happy to hear that. So we did this piece where she wasn't directly involved in it, but she kind of got me in it, which was called the Philly Follies. And it was basically a variety show that Ego Po Theater in Philadelphia did. And I kind of got to know a few more theater people that way. From there, I went to the after party and I heard them talking about this new piece they were going to do. And it was this piece called Opera Macabre. And it was all about Edgar Allan Poe. And I said, I want to do it. Can I be in it? I literally went up to the people I'd worked with, and I said, I want to do this. Can you write a part for me? And that's how I got involved. And from there, because I developed these relationships and had really good colleagues and was a good colleague and was willing to try things and get so out of my comfort zone. I mean, I was more out of my comfort zone in those pieces than I have been in anything else. And it was the best thing I could have ever done. Because I was willing to do that, I got so many more opportunities, and I got to work in theater in Philadelphia. And that segued into the Scranton Shakespeare Festival with Domina. I mean, Brenna directed that too. And so she's been a very vital, important part of my life. But I got to work with theater people who direct opera and interact with opera very differently than opera singers do, than musical theater people generally do. And it was really good for me, because it pushed me so far out of not just comfort zone, but boundaries I didn't even know I really had, and challenged those, and just made me very good at changing quickly, making decisions, reading my scene partners, anticipating. And I mean, one time we had music handed to us while she was staging, and that was the first time we'd seen it. That doesn't happen with opera. Ever. And and we changed blocking 7 times, in 2 days. And you come back to the same scene maybe in 2 weeks, but you wouldn't get the same kind of rehearsal time. It was really cool. And I still work with her whenever I get a chance. I always call myself a Geffer's girl because I'm at her beck and call.
Oh, I love it. And this is something that we hear over and over and over again as we're doing these interviews, as how to build the career and what do you have to do. And first of all, being good at your job. As a singer, you've got to have a good voice, you've got to be a good actor, but you've got to be a great colleague, and you've got to take risks, and you've got to be pleasant to work with, so that when you make those asks, and you have to be bold, you have to make those asks, that the people want to say yes.
Yes. And it's all about who you know. I know I heard that in one of your other interviews too. So how did you get the job? Well, your pianist, one of your pianists said, I never auditioned. I auditioned all the time and never got anything. Yeah. But I generally don't have to audition so much anymore, because enough people know who I am and have worked with me that if they know that I can do what I can do and that's what they want, they'll call me. Yep. Or they'll send me a message. And I'm really good at networking. That's a little brazen and bold to say that, but I like to keep in touch with people, and I feel like I'm really good at it. So that's something I highly recommend people get good at. If you're uncomfortable randomly calling someone and saying, let's have coffee, get over it. Just do it.
Well, and that's something I will give the University of Michigan props for. They do a great job of preparing their students for the networking and the business aspect of, you have to make a phone call, you have to write an email, you have to make a contact, do something to build your network every single day. It's just, it's a prerequisite for building a career.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
It's interesting, even among those of us who do this all the time and are constantly expanding our networks, having a reason to call people up. I don't know, for this series, John and I have just started cold calling people that we maybe met once.
I love it.
Or maybe only knew online. Hi, how are you?
Hey, it's nice to meet you.
You have to step out and you have to do those things. So I want to ask, because this interests me as a person who loves to do crossover things. As a big voice, as an opera singer, as a classical soprano, did you love doing musical theater, Domina? Was that way different?
It was so great. It was so great. So, I mean, I feel like I have enough control over my voice that I don't want to say pull back, but I pull back for lack of a better term. That being said, I don't tend to pull back much. I just change the style. And I've had people running mics and stuff say, it's really loud. It's really loud. I have to turn everybody else way up, and turn you all the way down. But for luckily for that show, we weren't mic'd. It was a small theater,
Okay.
and they just had us go, which was really nice.
That's awesome.
I have been mic'd in other shows, and I did carry the musical at a community theater, and I played Margaret White, and that was an issue, like the fact that I was just so loud. But yeah, I think it's just so much fun. Karen Getz was the choreographer for that. And I don't know if you guys know that name, but you know who she is, even if you don't know her name. She is the sassy dancer in Dirty Dancing that is always giving people like the dirty eye. You'd know her the minute you hear her. She has short dark hair. Anyway, she was our choreographer, and she was phenomenal because she worked with us where we were at. And I think that's kind of sums up how maybe musical theater is a little bit different than opera, is that you have to be whatever the level is at opera, whatever your house level is, whatever. With musical theater, I found that it tends to be, of course, they want people to be their best, but they also find what their best skills are and kind of bring them out a little bit more. And I feel like that doesn't really happen as much with opera. You're just expected to be XYZ. With opera.
I absolutely no,
Yeah.
I love that. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Certainly as a musical director, we've talked about this on the show before, but I've found it as well. When you work with on the classical side, the expectation is you show up, you know your music, that you are performing at the level that we hired you to be at already. Whereas in theater, they want that moldable product. We want to teach you the music. We want to teach you the way we want you to perform the music. We want to, move you and shape you into the production that we want to see.
100%. But I also think that from an artistic director standpoint, when I've been at a musical rehearsal, whether I'm helping with musical direction or not, if someone is more malleable as a classical singer and they're willing to try new things and willing to adapt, it makes the entire process so much easier. You can't just say, well, this is the way I'm going to do it, or this is the way Pavarotti did it, so I'm doing it that way. You can't do that anymore. That doesn't get you hired back. You might get hired, you might have a great high C, but you're probably not going to get hired back.
Yeah. Well, I love that observation because opera's changing too. The classical world is being informed by theater and vice versa. And that's why I love talking to people who cross over. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a wonderful segue into what is an upcoming, or what are you doing with your opera company through COVID, and how will that inform what you do post-COVID?
Okay, so that's a big question. So it hit everybody all at the same time, right? It hit it right around March, and we had planned a gala for May. We had a bel canto gala. We had just announced it. Everyone was contracted. And so we decided to postpone that. For now, we don't know if that's going to end up being a virtual concert or if it will be a live concert. We did have an opera planned for October, and we canceled that. We had started casting, but no contracts had gone out yet for that one. So we kind of shifted gears, and we decided that when we come back, we're going to come back with a bigger opera than what we had planned, and so that we can really kind of come back with a bang. The nice thing about what we're doing is because we are grassroots. I mentioned before I started with a friend of mine. She's also Wilmington based. Her name's Marissa Robinson. She's our executive director as well. And she and I do everything together. We make every decision together, which I think is a little different than a lot of companies. But, we're a minority run, female run, grassroots opera company. We have no overhead because we don't pay ourselves yet. We were hoping to eventually pay ourselves, and then that kind of went out the window. But we've been very fortunate to grow steadily because we have a really good network of singers that enjoy working with us because our standards are incredibly high, but we also have a very familial collegiality. So, we come together, we have a good time, but our standards are incredibly high. So because we're singers, we expect the best singing from people. We expect everything that we've learned how to do to be met at every rehearsal. And we can be a lot of fun, but we're no nonsense at the same time. So it's kind of neat that we've kind of grown a reputation and gotten some really high caliber singers that want to sing with us, even though we've only just recently been able to start paying them. So we declared nonprofit status a couple of years ago, and since when we've been able to get enough grants that we're starting to grow little by little. So to get back to your actual question, we've been doing an at-home concert series with our singers that have sung with us in the past or were contracted to sing with us. And that is anything from someone singing who happens to live with a pianist to singing with a karaoke track to singing a cappella, whatever they want. And we've attached that to the Delaware Community Foundation as a fundraiser for them for helping to hopefully stop the spread of COVID-19. And we're still doing that. We had a lot of it at the beginning of March and April, and then it kind of slowly dwindled. We're still doing it. It's just not as frequent. We then opened it up to, what are you doing for at-home content? Are you creating art? Are you a fan? Are you a friend of ours? Have you never met us, but you think we're cool? And that kind of led me to do some of the same things you were talking about, Russ, where I see something really cool online and I go to that person and say, you don't know me, but I really want to feature this. Will you let me feature this? And I've done that a handful of times. I've met some cool people that way. In fact, our feature today is one of those, where we ended up having this really long pedagogy conversation about trans voices, actually. And I know very little about trans voices, but this person knew a ton and taught me a lot just because I happened to reach out because they had a really, really cool video. And, and we're doing a lot of really interesting things that way. At least I think they're interesting. And that's any kind of art, music, art, baked goods, whatever people are creating, because we want to showcase what is still happening in the world, and also kind of boost morale a little bit, because it's a depressing time. It's really depressing time. We're working on people having virtual concerts and things like that, but it's not the same. And it takes time, it takes energy, it takes funds, and recording technology is only getting better and better, but we're not quite there yet. So I think that, by the end of this, there's going to be things like, Zoom is going to be passe. We're going to have moved on from that, I'm sure. And, in a couple months, there's going to be something even better, unless Zoom comes out with something better. But yeah, I think that we're doing that. And then we're planning to come back with a vengeance and go really hard, do some really awesome shows, hopefully have a chorus and do stuff like that. And keep our standards high. That's what we want to do. And as long as I'm creating good music with people who want to be there and are giving their best, I'm happy.
Fantastic. And I love the at-home concerts, by the way. I catch them, I catch the stuff that you're featuring and all of that. And you guys have gotten some great press for the philanthropic things you're doing. You hit a list of opera companies that were, really giving back.
Yeah.
All that recently. I don't remember what the context was. You could probably.
Yeah, it was Verismo magazine was actually featuring a whole bunch of companies that were donating funds for COVID-19. And here we are with like Atlanta Opera, and we're like, yeah, this is us. You never heard of us, but now you have, and it's really cool, to have our name featured along people like that, and we've got some, I don't want to say big names. We got bigger name people interested in us now. And we've had some bigger name people sing with us too. And it's not about the name, of course, we don't care about the name, but when bigger name people are interested in us, it gets the word out. We get more people interested. And it also helps to just build interest in opera. One of our big things that we wanted to do is not just be inclusive and diverse, but also reach people at an early age and say opera's for everyone. We make everything family friendly enough that people can bring their kids. And we encourage that. If a kid cries in a concert, it's not the end of the world. We want kids to come, and we have all of our concerts for free too. That's another thing. If we produce it, it's for free. And that's been something that we've really kind of highlighted, that we hope to keep continuing to do, because there's a lot of art out there, but not all of it's accessible. And we want it to be accessible.
Ain't that the truth?
I love it. Well, we'll definitely make sure to feature, everything you have coming up, websites and things like that, when we post our episode here.
Awesome. Love it.
It's important stuff. Cool. So, let me see here. I'm just going down our list again, John, because I lost my train of thought.
Well, while you're looking, while you're thinking, what's a career highlight or aspiration?
Oh gosh, I have a lot of really awesome things that have happened in my life. They're all in my bio. No, I have a couple. There's two that I really think are really special. I mean, I've sung at Carnegie Hall, which was awesome, but that's not even on my list. So my number one thing is that for my doctorate, my final project, I put together commissions of world premiere pieces that I wanted to have done based on the poetry of my great uncle, who was a poet, the main poet that almost like a poet laureate of the Muskogee tribe. So when I did that, I commissioned these pieces. I premiered them in Ann Arbor, and I recorded them, and I had them written up in the Muskogee Nation News in Oklahoma. And from there, the Smithsonian Institution for the Museum of the American Indian got in touch with me, and they said they wanted to have my pieces archived and have as part of their collection. And they also added me to their classical native artists and musicians list, which I thought was one of the coolest highlights of my life. And that's going to be something that's really hard to surpass. So that's kind of followed me a little bit. And I've had a lot of people get in touch with me about, well, who are your Indigenous composer friends? I have a couple, but it's one of those things that there just needs to be more done with that kind of market. And I feel like what I did was kind of opened a door to not only poetry that isn't as well known, but also the idea of being able to commission works based on the poetry that you love. And I've used that with my students too. I've had them commission things and premiere them too, which, when you first tell them that, they get completely overwhelmed, and then they realize how fun it is. And yes, it's a lot of work, but it's really worthwhile. So that's my first thing. My second thing is that you mentioned it briefly. I got to go and do my European premiere this last year, solo symphony premiere with Sophia Philharmonic, and we recorded a never before recorded Johann Strauss operetta called Blindeku, and it was so much fun. I really hope I get to do more. I think I might get to do more. I've stayed in good contact with the conductor, and he's constantly working up these old operetta scores, and it's just been something that's been really great for me. It came out in March, right as everything hit. And I was just so glad it actually came out. I thought everything might get halted, but it didn't. And it's been really good for me to take that to the next step, to actually have a Naxos recording and be considered a Naxos recording artist. And, I can search my name on Spotify, and it's really cool. So yeah, those are my two highlights so far. I mean, I want to keep growing and creating and singing, the best music I can wherever I can, and we'll see where it leads me. I'm open to whatever exciting adventures come my way.
I think that's awesome. And I love how your kind of eclectic approach to, I'm going to take on all of these different things, and it's how we build careers. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
That leads us to what we usually ask right near the end as we wrap up is, what's one thing that you would tell aspiring singers, aspiring young artists?
Okay. Yeah. So
moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing to realize is that you will at one point be the best singer in the room. And then another point, you will not be the best singer. You will probably be the worst singer in the room. And you have to be okay with failure. You have to be okay with trying and not getting the job. There will be times when you are the best person for that job, and you've heard the other singers and you're the best person, and you don't get it. And what you need to do is to be able to pick yourself up and brush yourself off, go in and do the next audition and sing your face off and turn around and forget it. Because if you can do that and you represent yourself the best you can, that's your win. It's not getting the job. It's not getting the contract. It's not winning the competition. I could have made a career out of being second place. If that were something that could make people famous, I would be a household name. But you have to carve your own path a lot. Very few people win the Met at 22. Very, very few people. Very few people get the Broadway job. If you are one of those people and you get it, that's awesome. And that is amazing. But it doesn't happen for most people, and it doesn't mean that you're not good. You know, and it's not the end of the world to take a day job. I have a day job. I'm really good at it. In fact, my boss even told me I was really good at it the other day. It gives you more skills. It makes you more aware of the people you're around. It makes you more aware of who your potential audience is. And they're going to think you're really interesting or really weird. And that's okay too. But yeah, just be open to any possibility and be fearless. You know, if you have a chance, go for it. And if you're scared of it, that's probably a good thing, because that means you're challenging yourself. And somebody else said, you know, say yes and figure out how to do it. I think that's awesome. But also know your limits. Someone came to me asking me if I could sing a role the other day, and I knew I couldn't. I knew it was not in my FOC. It was not something I would ever be able to sing. And I begrudgingly said, no, I can't do it. But I don't say that very often. Very, very rarely do I actually say it. So take a risk and figure it out and see where things lead you. Take that weird path that you don't really know where it'll be and see where it goes. And also be a good person. Be a good spouse or partner if you have someone else in your life, and be flexible. And, you know, if you want a family, you can do it. It's going to be really hard, but you can do it. I'm doing it right now and trying to juggle everything. And it's because I have a really awesome spouse that I'm able to. So yeah, that is one of many, 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 many spiels I could give you. But yeah, I thought about that one today.
I like that. That's a great piece of advice. I love it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Kirsten. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Nice to meet you both officially. I'll see you in person one of these days.
Yeah, you too.
Can't wait.
Take care.